Hello everyone. I am finally ready to do a recording to talk about the Division. I did a few recordings prior to this to talk about the beta. This recording will cover the release, the positives and negatives, and what I think could be done to change it. I'm going to start with the negatives because the gun system is still bugging me. The reason for that is because, in my opinion, if you're going to make a game with a storyline and an environment that revolves around real life weapons, then it is your responsibility to do so correctly. I'll show you what I mean by just going through the categories and listing the weapons as I know them. Starting with assault rifles. The LWRC is basically an M4. It depends which model you're talking about, but the LWRC M6 has definitely seen some combat. I think it's only seen combat in private sectors, though. I have not seen any mention of the LWRC being in any wars. So I guess this rifle is fine, but if they could make sure to list the model they're using, that would be great. Moving on to ACR. The ACR rifle stands for Adaptive Combat Rifle. This rifle was supposed to replace the M4. The story, as I understand it, is that it was not successful in doing so. One of the major reasons was because something like they advertised it for like $1,500 and it turned out to be a $3,000 rifle. So it's very expensive for military purposes. The FAL is actually something they've got right in this category, along with one other, which I'll cover in a second. The FAL is a current serving military rifle in foreign countries. So I don't really need to mention that too much. The P416, I'm going to guess is an HK416 by looking at it. I did check the Division wikis to see if that's what they were doing, but I don't see any mention of it there. So I really can't do too much with that. But if it is the HK416, that one has definitely seen combat, so perfectly acceptable, just reward it. Steyr Aug is actually a legit rifle, so at least they got that one in the FAL right. The AK-47 and 74. This one is up for debate. I recognize the story is based in New York after a giant virus hit. So it may be hard to acquire resources, weapons, and things of that nature. However, at the same time, I kind of want to believe that because the division has the government's backing, that they may be able to afford a more modern version. The most modern version of the AK, I think, is the AK-12. Somebody can check me on that. I'm going off of memory. I know that there was something to do with the AK-9, AK-12, and I can never remember what the difference is between the two. Other than that, one special purpose and the other one is supposed to be a variable system or something like that. Anyways, moving on. The SA-58 rifle is actually just another model of the FAL rifle. From what I'm able to see, it's the para version. The para version refers to the fact that it's used by paratroopers. So I don't get the point of adding just another model in there. I would honestly replace that with another assault rifle, such as the FAMAS. which is the French assault rifle. The LVOA, I was not able to find anything on this at all. There's not one review. There's not even a wiki. There's not even a combat record for it. The most I can see is that it's made by Warsport Arms. Never even heard of this company. I have no idea what this assault rifle is doing in the game. Honestly, that should be replaced too. I would replace that with the L86. I'm aware that the L86 is in the game. I will cover why I'm saying that in just a few minutes. Designated Marksman Rifle. Now, there are three major rules of thumb when it comes to a designated marksman rifle. Whenever you attach that terminology to a rifle, number one, it's going to be a rifle with semi-auto fire. Number two, high capacity magazine. And number three, it will be designed to engage targets at a range greater than a rifleman, but less than a sniper. Depending on the unit, their tactics, and all of that, this can arguably be 300 yards to 800 yards. So looking at this list, I see an M1A and a SOCOM 16. Those are basically the same rifles. The M1A is the older version. The SOCOM is the more modern version. There is absolutely no need to have, again, two of the same models sitting in the game. I would honestly replace the M1A with a Knight's Armament SR25. The SR25 is a proven rifle. It is actually in use by the military, both the Australian and United States Army, in different models, of course. Yeah, so I would do that. The SRS is a Desert Tactical Arms Stealth Recon Scout. That's actually a special purpose rifle. As I was taught, the terminology special purpose rifle indicates a rifle that is not necessarily in a category. It covers more than one category or is close to a category. So in this case, from what I'm able to see with the SRS, it's a 16-inch barrel bullpup bolt action rifle. So this doesn't even qualify as a designated marksman rifle and should not be in this category. I mean, by all means, keep it in the game if you want to, but I would honestly move that out of the category. The Mark 17 is just another SCAR. There's already a million versions of the SCAR in the game. I mean, it's like, do you really need another SCAR in this game? There's plenty already. And even then, the Mark 17, or SCAR 17 in this case, is really an assault rifle by designation. I mean, yeah, it can qualify as a marksman rifle if you throw a scope on it and things of the nature, but that's not really what it was intended for. As a matter of fact, F.N. Herstal created two new weapons in recent times to fill that role. One of them being the Mark 20 SSR, which stands for Sniper Support Rifle, and the other is the CSR-20. Those are true designated marksman rifles. So if you really want to throw in more F.N. Herstal weaponry in there, just replace the Mark 17 with one of those two. The M44, I'm going to guess, is a Mosin Nagant. That should not be in the designated marksman category either, and I honestly don't think it should be in the game at all. That's a very old rifle that mostly are bought by collectors. I don't understand the logic with that. Moving on to machine guns. This category for the most part is fine with the M60, M249, and RPK. It's just that L86 that needs to be fixed. As I was saying in the assault rifle category, that could be a replacement for the above rifles. The reason I don't think it should be in the machine gun category is because if you look at a page about it, you'll see that it's a um, light support weapon. So notice the wording, it's not even saying machine gun, it's saying light support weapon. The British Army does have a support weapon that they use in place of that, and that would be the L110A2 light machine gun, aka the FN Herstal Minimi. I guess I pronounce that. Now, there isn't a general rule of thumb with machine guns, but the reason that militaries utilize machine guns is for sustained fire. In order to sustain fire, you'll need a quick swap barrel and belt-fed magazine, usually. If you read about the L86 LSW, you will actually see mention of that, I'm pretty sure, in some form or another, because they will say that about the barrel and the belt-feds thing. So, that can honestly be moved to the assault rifle category, and you could put in a different machine gun there. Moving on to submachine guns. MP5 and MP7 really are just two different models. They're both 9mm submachine guns. I would have honestly liked to see a replacement for the MP7. I was thinking you could replace that with the MP5 A10. The MP5 A10 is a model of the MP5 that is chambered for 10mm rounds. That would be a very easy submachine gun to get a hold of. So that would fit story-wise. But moving on, the T821, I actually thought was an Uzi at first when I looked at it. I did Google it to make sure before I did this recording, and it actually turns out to be a Sashimi Type 821. I'm not actually seeing too much on that, so I honestly don't get the point of that being in there. I would replace the T821 with a P90 from FN Herstal. That would be my suggestion there. The SMG9 is a Tech 9. And this is a weapon used by gangsters, so I don't understand the purpose of a paramilitary organization utilizing that. I would honestly replace that with a different submachine gun. Perhaps put in a UMP 45 or one of those kinds of submachine guns. The Kriss Vector, Super V, whatever you want to call it, it has a million different names, is a very modern submachine gun. It's very expensive. So this falls under the category of it's debatable, just like the AK-47 and 74. You know, a virus hit New York, but the division does have the government's backing, so maybe they can get the stuff they need for that. Hard for me to tell. Moving on to shotguns. The Sega 12, the M4 Super 90, they're perfectly okay. Honestly, they could have probably replaced the Sega with a different shotgun, like a Benelli Nova or one of those new high-capacity double-tubed shotguns, like the UTOS 15 or something like that. The reason for that is because a Sega 12 is basically an AK. It uses AK parts. It's not a complete AK, but it's kind of like you already have the AK 47, 74, and RPK in there. So, again, I mean, you can leave that if you want to. It's not a big deal, but more variety somewhere would be nice. M4 Super 90, perfectly okay. I mean, that's seen combat, so I know that's a fine shotgun. The Remington 870, though. They do have the 870 in the game with its wood and longer barrel from what it looks like. Um, this is the same thing I said in the beta recording. Um, it's New York. There's a million police departments in New York. It's just one of those things. Like, if you're gonna do it proper, then do it proper. I would have put um, the Remington 870 Tactical in there. The difference between the Remington 870 Tactical and the hunting variant, which is the one which has the wood to it, the Remington 870 has a shorter barrel. It's black painted. It has a reinforced barrel, and just a few other features that make it great for tactical situations. Actually, at the Law Enforcement Academy, Remington 870s, we're taught to use them for interesting tactics such as breech load, which is where we shove the shell into the area where the shell would normally be ejected. It's our way of doing a rapid fire single shot. Um, we only do that in situations where um, we know that we can't load a full tube. The other reason behind the reinforced barrel is for flinging out special things like beanbag rounds, things of that nature. So yeah, I would replace that honestly because that one isn't even a debatable thing. If they're doing it in New York and knowing New York, there's a lot of police departments. I can assure you, every police department you run across in New York is going to have a 870 tactical. So that should be fixed. This list isn't really too long for shotguns from what I've seen so far, so they probably could add more to that. Like I said, they could replace the Sigma 12 with the Utah's 15 or something, and maybe somewhere down there they can add the Daewoo shotgun, which is the drum-fed magazine automatic shotgun, or they could do the AA-12, which is another drum-fed automatic shotgun. Moving on to pistols. They kind of did the same thing here as they did with the assault rifles. The M1911 and M45A1 are basically the same thing. It's a 1911 frame, they just have different parts or upgrades, if you will. Same thing happening with the M9 and M9A1. So I would honestly start replacing some of that. I would replace the M9A1 with the Beretta 96A1, which is a 40 SW. As for the M1911 or M45A1, depends which one you want to choose. I would honestly replace that with a Magnum Research Desert Eagle. That way you have a magazine-fed high caliber pistol in the game. The PF45 is a Smith & Wesson M&P, from what I'm able to see in the game. So that's perfectly acceptable. The 586 Magnum is a Smith & Wesson Model 586. It's a much older revolver, so I really don't know if that would be acceptable or not for this particular story. I mean, to be fair, police departments did use revolvers in the old days, so I'm wondering if that's something that maybe you can find at the police departments like you can with the Remington 870. I don't know. But I would definitely add to this category. Not only would I insert the Desert Eagle into there, I would also add the FN Herstal 5.7mm pistol to go with its buddy, the P90, which you can add to the submachine gun category. I would also probably add a 6-hour P226 and 357 SIG, and just things like that, to increase variety, of course. Yeah, so that kind of ends my discussion with the individual weapons themselves. Now I'll branch out and talk about the actual combat aspect. Um, for the longest time, I always found M9s with more DPS than the M1911, which I find completely odd because in real life an M1911 will do way more damage to a person, even an armored person, than an M9 ever would. That should be higher DPS all around, no matter what. Um, Armored enemies. Now, this is something that you'll encounter when you start reading into body armor. The reason Kevlar is designed to absorb a round rather than stop it is because of the kinetic energy behind the bullet. Um, if you were to stop a bullet, you run the risk of causing uh, damage to yourself, especially in the head region. If you try to stop a bullet with your head, there's a good chance it will snap your neck. So I was kind of expecting to see some sort of additional damage on top of the normal headshot damage, such as damaged neck um, and things of that nature. At no point should a helmet have the armor rating of a steel helmet or something. That's just unrealistic. Um, Furthermore, there should be some sort of additional damage built in to armor for some of the weapons, such as the M1911, any of the rifles using 7.62, the Kriss Super V, um, and if you add the FN Herstal 5.7 pistol and the P90, those definitely should have a much greater effect on armor than any of the other ones in there. So, with that discussed, I will now move into the positives. The graphics are actually really nice. There's even snowstorms. Unfortunately, it does cause a bit of a latency issue, especially if you're in a firefight or doing a mission. I think that is something that I can't really throw into the negative because that's easily fixable. Um, that falls into the expansion thing that I'm about to mention. I saw the roadmap for the division. I think they said they had 4 expansions they wanted to push out by the end of this year. Um, so that's awesome that they're already working really hard to give more content. Um, Perhaps they'll be able to fix the latency graphics issues along the way. Um, I appreciate that the division is a constant change. In a lot of online games, it's a constant grind fest to not only get levels but get the gear you need to advance. In the division, there was never any of that. It was a constant move through New York and all this other stuff. So that's just awesome. The crafting system, even though I hate the fact that you can only reroll one stat, for the most part, I like that it's set to be able to be used by anyone. It doesn't take a certain amount of skill or anything. As long as you have the materials, you can craft it. Phenomenal. Um, the online play, I think, is a little bit unbalanced, but I guess in a way it's a bonus, especially with the partying stuff. Um, when I looked at YouTube recordings to see how fast somebody completed this game, I saw a couple people that did it in 25 hours. When I looked at how they did it, they had somebody carry them. Um, in other games, they would have some serious penalties for doing something like that, like decrease X gain or something like that. Um, but again, that's something that's fixable in the near future if they wish to do so. So I can't really throw that into a negative category. Um, I mean, it's just a minor thing, and for the most part, it's an overall great system. I like how easy it is to find friends. I like how easy it is to get to where they are. Um, yeah, so I can't really nitpick that too much. Um, the Dark Zone is actually an interesting mixed mash of PvE and PvP. So that I actually like. Again, it's one of those things that I can't throw into a negative because there's only one minor thing I would change with that, and that would be to create contamination bins. I've said this in my prior recordings, and I've said it in the forums. I think that it would be nice if they gave a second option for getting your contaminated items. I thought the best way to do that was to create contamination bins at the checkpoints. This way, a player has the option to either do an evac or run to the checkpoint and just drop it off. That way, it's not relying on the helicopters. Again, minor. Um, I like the weapon modification system. It goes beyond stats. They actually have cosmetic applications to it. You can get an angle grip in black or red. You can get a scope in 1 times, 4 times, 8 times, 10, 15. There's all sorts of variety there. So props to that. Perhaps later on they can add um, ammo types to the game. You can um, load a particular weapon with a certain magazine, such as jacketed hollow point rounds to increase damage against unarmored, um, and of course armor piercing for armored targets. Something like that. Again, minor, but it can be fixed with the expansions coming out. So I can't throw that in there in the negatives. Um, yeah, I think that's really all I can say about the division. So I'll end it here. Thank you for listening.